Welcome back to my channel for two interesting Leica episodes. And the episode in this video will about the new firmware of the Leica Q3 Monochrom, the Leica Q3 28 and the Leica Q3 43. I'll pack them all in one video because there are lots of similarities. There is a convergence going on in Leica firmware for the Q cameras as well as for the SL cameras, which I really appreciate. I think is a great idea what Leica is doing here. And then in a second video coming in the next days, I will talk in detail about the Leica SL3 and the SL3S because they also got new firmware with huge improvements. I personally think this new firmware is the biggest jump in capabilities, in features we have seen on Q and SL cameras for a long time. Let's kick this off. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please do so. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, support my work. Many thanks for that. All right, let's put the Leica SL3 aside because that will come with a dedicated video. And let's focus on the three Q3 cameras here in front of me on the table. And in a recent video, I actually talked about firmware updates coming to the Q3 28 and the Q3 43. And I also showed you what I expect to find place also in the Q3 28 and the Q3 43. And today is the day where I'm going to show you all of this. And for each of the three cameras, I have the new firmware already on the SD cards. You can also update this via the Leica Fotos App, which might be even more convenient for some of you. But I still go old school here and have placed the firmware file on the SD card and will do the updates now. And I want to start with the Q3 43. Let's switch it on and let's go into the menu. And then on page number 5, we find camera information. Let's go into that firmware, start update. And here we go. It already started and asks me last time for confirmation, do you want to update to firmware version 4.0.0? I'm saying yes. And then it starts. And there is a novum happening here, which you have never seen on my channel. And I've seen now for the very first time in Leica Q. And also I think it's the same in Leica SL camera updates, namely that the software is not asking you whether you want to store user profiles. And as far as I understand it from the release notes of this new firmware 4.0, it's actually automatically taken care of. So you will not be forced to set up your user profiles again because the firmware update will recognize them and preserve them for you. And that is, of course, convenient. What needs to be redone is the connection to the Leica Fotos app. At least that's what I read in the release notes. And we are going to look into that later. Let's now take the Q3 28. Let's also start that process. Let's go into the menu and let's move on here to camera information. It's on the same page. Sorry, I was going too far. And here we have the same procedure. We wait for the confirmation screen. We say yes, and it will start immediately, not questioning me if I want to preserve my user profiles because the firmware is recognizing it and taking care of it. And the same for the Q3 Monochrom. Let's go here, and here we have already the new menu system. Let's go here and go through the very last page here, and then camera information 3.90 currently, firmware update, and it will ask me for confirmation, version 4.0, and I say yes, and that's it. It will start the firmware update process. All right, that's it. All three cameras are working now. Actually, the Q3 43 is already done. I will come back and continue with the video when all these updates are successfully implemented. Okay, all three firmware updates are successfully completed. And before I restart the three cameras, and we'll play with all three of them simultaneously now, I want to provide you with a word of caution. And that's the following. Although you will find on the Leica website release notes which cover all three of these cameras, the firmware files are individually available for download. And I'm not so sure whether people will notice it, but I think it's important don't start to take a firmware update file for the Q328 and use it in the Q343. I'm not sure whether it's working at all, but if it would work, it would definitely mess up the camera. Because here we have an Autofocus lens, 43mm. Here we have a Summilux lens, 28mm, in the same way as on the Monochrom. And they need different calibrations. So don't mix up these firmware updates. Stick to what Leica posts in the individual download sections for each and every of these 3 cameras. Take the firmware files from there and then put them on the SD card. Don't mix them up, and then start the firmware upgrade process. Or maybe even better, where probably you're not vulnerable to errors, do it via the Leica Fotos app, because then the camera is directly connected to the Leica Fotos app, and you can start the firmware upgrade process via your phone, which might be, as I said before, the more convenient way for many of you. Let's switch all these cameras off and let's restart them. Give him a couple of seconds to breathe, and then we restart them. And let's see what we get. And here, first of all, we see the Q3 Monochrom animation. So that camera is ready to go. Here we have another message. Let me bring this closer to the camera. Security update installed. Please pair your device again. And that's what I said before. There's a new European regulation which required Leica to include an element in the firmware which requires a reconnection to the Leica Fotos app. And that is what you should do. I will skip this for the time being and will just stick with what's in the camera. The same here in the Q343. Continue, skip it for a moment, go to yes here, and we are good to go. All right, I've placed now all 3 cameras in front of me. Here is the Q3 Monochrom, here is the Q328, and here is the Q343. And I want to explore now with you the new firmware 4.0.0 in a more systematic way. And first of all, we have now full convergence of the graphical user interface, the menu structure, the icons, which some people like to call Licons, with the Leica SL3 and SL3S. And that means if you look at the control screens here of these 3 cameras, I've configured them in kind of the same way now. So I set up the cameras because now these 4 soft buttons here, so we have 4 in this row, 4 in this row, they are fully customizable. Let me quickly show you how this works. I show it once, then you can apply it to any of these cameras, to any of the 8 soft buttons here. Currently here, for instance, I have drive mode, and I can change my drive mode in this way. And if I want to have a different function, I do not just tap, but tap and hold. Then I get a bunch of functions which I can select. Let's say we take here scene mode. And then you see how the icon changed. Here it's still drive mode, here it's still drive mode, here it's scene mode. Let's go back to drive mode because I followed a principle, of course, when setting up these cameras. And that's the way you customize it. You can select which functions appear when you tap and hold. So here, for instance, if I tap and hold, I get a longer list. This is currently in focus mode. I can scroll through here. If I think this list is too long, or I have certain preferences which I want to have to sit here and others which I don't want to have to sit here, I can go into the menu to customize controls. And I show you quickly, this is here, customize control. And then I can choose here under function buttons what is toggled on and what is toggled off. I've shown this many times in tutorials on my channel, and you guys will know by now how this works. The way the menu is organized follows exactly the blueprint from the Leica SL3 and SL3S. And if I press the menu button here after the control screen, there is no longer a favorites page, and the page numbering doesn't work in horizontal direction as it used to work before on the previous firmware. It's now all in vertical direction. I have here page indicator. This is page number 1, page number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we go back into the control screen. And that is exactly how the Leica SL3 is organized. So this convergence between the SL system and the Q system, by me at least, is highly appreciated because I shoot both cameras, and I know a lot of people who have the compact camera, which is a Q3 or what have you, and have also the system camera from Leica, the Leica SL3 or the SL3S if you are more into videography. And if these menus are organized in the same way, if the graphical user interface has the same reactions, the same operations and workflow, you can easily switch between cameras without getting confused. All the icons, including the battery symbol here, they are fully adopted from the Leica SL3. We had it before on the Q3 Mono. I showed this in my videos on the Leica Q3 Monochrom on my channel. And this is all now a unified approach here. And I think this is really cool. Also, if we go through the menu, have a look here, everything you find here, like for instance here, the shutter type, what have you, every of these icons is organized in the same way as they are on the Leica SL3. Let's go into focusing, for instance. Look at these icons here, these symbols. This is all exactly the same. And this convergence, as I just had, that helps you to switch between the Q system and the SL system without any flaws. The autofocus system of the Q328 and the Q343 has been completely revamped. And the same applies to the Leica SL3. And as I said, I will post this in a separate video because the SL3 deserves a dedicated approach when looking into the new firmware. And that also changed certain menu items. And there is a new feature here, which is called autofocus detection. I've set this up for a soft button here and here. And we can say here off, we can say human, eye, face, body. We can say human, eye, face only. We can say animal body, and we can say animal, eye, and body. And this is for the first time because a long time we had here actually animal in beta version. I switch this off for a moment. And here now, based on new AI algorithms, Leica has retrained their focus system that autofocus detection works in a much, much better way. And the tracking field is also adapting its size and is trained in a way that it automatically detects when it should resize in order to achieve better results and more precise focus, for instance, on moving subjects when you have tracking activated. On the Q3 Monochrom, a bunch of things are different, and I want to quickly show you. First of all, if we go here into autofocus detection, we have also off, we have the same options as we have them in the Q328 and in the Q343. But in the focus mode, we have field and spot and zone and multi-field. And if you look into the same on the Q328, for instance, you have field, spot, zone, multi-field, and you have tracking. And tracking is not available on the Q3 Monochrom because there is no face detection, face with a PH, not with an F. Because faces with F will be detected, but face detection as a focus technique in addition to contrast detection is not implemented on the Q3 Monochrom for technical reasons, and therefore you have recognition or detection, but you don't have tracking. If you look here, you just have field and spot and zone and multi-field. And that is a difference between the Q3 Monochrom and the other two Q3 cameras here in front of me. All three cameras have the digital zoom, or you could also call it crop into the sensor, with a simulation of certain focal lengths available, depending on the lens, of course. Here we have 2 times the Summilux 28. Here we have an upper Summicron 43mm. And I've set this up for all three cameras in the same way. I want to have this on a button because I really use it. And if I push it here once, let's go into live view. I've intentionally not removed the lens caps because you will see better what's going on here. So if I push that button, you get the first crop. If I push that button, you get the first crop. You also get it here. And of course, it's different focal length simulations because here we have 2 times the same lens. Here we have a different lens. And then we can continue here. Let's do this on the 43. And then we are back into full frame. We are back into full frame. If we press it often enough, and I have this sitting on this customizable function button, but you can now also set up under customized controls in the menu what focal length simulations you actually want to have here. So let's go into the menu on the Q328. Let's go to customize control, and then you see the digital zoom steps. And here you see it simulating 35mm, 50mm, 75 and 90. If I only want, for instance, a simulation of 90mm, I deactivate them all. And watch what happens now. I press this function button here once. I get the 90mm, I press it again, the 90mm is gone, and we are back into full frame sensor, aspect ratio 3:2. That's the way it works. If I want to have all of them, I can go back into customize controls, digital zoom steps, and I activate them all again. And I think you see the pattern by now. And then if I want, I have them all available here. And that works exactly in the same way on all 3 cameras. Let's go here to customize controls. Here we go. And here you have the digital zoom steps. Here you simulate, because that's a 43mm lens, you simulate 60, 75, 90, 120 and 150mm. And here we also have it in the same way. It's a bit difficult for me to reach. Let's go here. Customize control is here. And here we have the digital zoom steps. And then if I press it, you see it's the same as what we had on the Q3 because it's the same lens, namely 35, 50, 75 and 90mm. That's the way it works, and that is a new feature we have here in the Q3 cameras in all 3 of them. Another change, which I already discussed in my videos on the Leica Q3 Monochrom here, is the setup of combinations between DNG and JPG images. And you find this, let's go here to page number 2. And then we find this under file format. And you no longer have to go on the Q3 Monochrom, and that used to be right from scratch when the camera was introduced to the market. You don't have to go into 2 separate menus. You can just choose all combinations here in that menu. And you can go for DNG only in all 3 sizes, and then you can combine with JPEGs also in all 3 sizes. So you have all combinations here available. And the same, and I predicted that, is also now taking place on the Q3 and the Q3 Let's go here into the menu. Let's go back to file format. And then you see here, I always have this on LDNG and LJPEG, and you have all possible combinations here now, which is what I told you in that video back then, that it will find its way into the Q3 cameras here on the right-hand side. And highly likely, I've not checked yet, also into the Leica SL3, because it's more convenient. 1 menu entry for all possible size combinations, which is what you want. Same here. Let's go into file format, and then here you have exactly the same picture as what you have on the Q3 also on the Q3 I want to now make you familiar with the, let's say, updated autofocus system, and I will use the Leica Q3 here and show you a couple of things which have been implemented in firmware 4. And for this, I've placed Jennifer in front of the camera. I also want to go closer to the Leica Q3 in order to show you what's going on. If I now go into the control screen here, you see I'm currently here on autofocus mode in field and spot. And that works in the way we are used to. I can just focus, and if it finds focus, the focus field turns green, like here when I half press the shutter button. If I release my finger, then it turns white again. I can also resize this, and I tap and hold, and now I can use here the control wheel, and here I get now into spot, and that has been integrated into field. You see it here, this is spot, this is field, smallest size. Then I can make this bigger, and that's the way it works. That's the biggest size I have, smaller, even smaller, and then it switches into spot. And that has been integrated now, which is a streamlining I appreciate. Of course, I can now combine spot and field with the new feature, which is called autofocus detection. And I go back into the control screen, and I go here from autofocus detection off to human eye, face, and body. All right, let's go back into live view, and boom, immediately it recognizes Jennifer's body, but only because the focus field is sitting on Jennifer's body. If I move the focus field out of Jennifer's body, it's focusing on the background. So here it's really dictated by the size of the focus field and by the position of the focus field, whether Jennifer's body is detected. And then it works very well. And it is so crystal clear what happens here. Look, the focus field is sitting on Jennifer's body. I move away from Jennifer's body and the detection is gone, because it's only metering focus within that small rectangle. Now let's make the rectangle larger. Let's go here to the larger size. And then the moment in time I touch, look here, I just a little bit touch with the area of that focus field, Jennifer's body, and it jumps and recognizes it immediately. That's absolutely brilliant. Leica really improved this. It's so snappy. Look at that again. Off Jennifer's body, it touches on Jennifer's body a little bit, and boom, the body is recognized. Now, if in autofocus detection, I don't include the body, I only go to eye and face. Let's do this here. Let's go here to eye face only. It does not detect anything because the focus field, although I made it big, has no contact, not touching on the area in the frame where Jennifer's head and face is sitting. The moment in time I move that autofocus field up now and it gets in touch with Jennifer's head and face, it will recognize her face and her eyes. Look at that. Boom. Just one step. Look at that. Boom. And it immediately recognizes Jennifer's face and also the eyes. That works in the same way as I showed in many other tutorials on Leica Q3 cameras. But the way Leica implemented this now is absolutely fabulous in my opinion. Let's make the focus field smaller again. Let me go here and let's make this smaller. Not to spot, but smaller, smallest size. And let's go here away from recognition again to recognition or autofocus detection off. And let's look now into the other autofocus mode here. We looked into field and spot. Let's look into zone and multi-field. And that is an interesting one now because also here Leica integrated this. We saw here they integrated field and spot from the former autofocus system, and here they integrated zone and multi-field, which makes this menu very much streamlined. Pretty nice. Let's look into that. Boom, here. It recognizes her, it sees there is a subject, and it jumps on Jennifer's body because it's basically a subject it detects, but not an AI trained subject because we are here on autofocus detection off. If we go to eye, face, and body, and I switch back into live view, it will jump on Jennifer's body in the same way as what we saw on spot and field. Look here. But only because my zone, which is indicated by these, let's call it diagonal white lines, is actually sitting on Jennifer's body and touching it. If I move that away, the detection of Jennifer's body will be gone. Watch here. This is just too much on the right-hand side of Jennifer's body. If I move it by one step further in, it recognizes the body again in the same way as what we had before. Now also here I can change the size of that zone. Let me here tap and hold, and let me show you. This is the smallest zone we can have, and then one larger, even larger, and then very large. And let's go back to the smallest here. Let's confirm this. And let's now go back into eye and face detection, not body detection. Here we go. And since it's not in contact in any way, this zone here, which I can freely move in the frame here, is not in contact with the face and the eye. It will not recognize the face and the eye. But the moment in time I get it in touch, it finds the eyes, the face, and everything. Same principle as what we saw before. Very much streamlined, very well solved by Leica, and is working like a charm, of course. Now, let's quickly contemplate what does it mean to have available here different sizes. Well, let's say we have another person standing somewhere in the scene, and I want to control which of these persons' face or eyes are detected. Then I want to have a smaller zone here. If I know that I'm only shooting a photo model, let's say Stephanie, which you saw many times on my channel, I can actually be very generous and make this zone very, very large. Let's go here and let's make this super large. Here we go. And then wherever I am, it will immediately jump on Jennifer's face, you know, because then it is the whole frame which is searched for faces and eyes. And if it finds a human face, it will immediately snap on and focus on that face. And look how snappy that is. Absolutely fantastic. I'm so excited about that new autofocus system. Let's tap this again. Let's make it smaller. And let's continue our discussion. Now we have the same, of course, now here also in other autofocus detection situations like animal, and note here, no longer beta version. This is the animal body and this is the animal eye and body. And if you take photos of cats, dogs, what have you, this will come in nice and handy, and you will very likely get very nice images. I have to test this all out in real life, out in the field, of course. But what I see here theoretically, how it is working, how Jennifer's face and eyes and body are detected, although she's not really a human being. I don't want to hurt her feelings. Forgive me, Jennifer. This is absolutely fascinating. Just as a side note, if you have different subjects in the scene, I supplemented Jennifer now by the Witcher here, then you can toggle between subjects who are recognized in the way I showed in tutorials on my channel, because that was possible before, for instance, with eye focus and eye detection. And let's make that focus zone now here biggest size. Let's go here to the biggest size. And let's go here. And then you see it recognizes both faces simultaneously. The one of the Witcher, which is currently the one where the focus is sitting. And if I want to toggle between the Witcher and Jennifer, you see here tiny little yellow arrows in both directions. I can use the control here and now switch to Jennifer and switch back to the Witcher. And that's the way I can control this. Here is at Jennifer sitting, now it's at the Witcher's face. See here? Simple like that. Just as a side note, so that is also done in a very clever way, how it is implemented here. I'm not really a touch screen person. I like to use mechanical control elements. That's why I use this control wheel here to adjust the size of the zone. Let's do this again. Let's make this smaller. Now it's sitting on the Witcher only, and you see, by the way, that the autofocus detection is no longer recognizing Jennifer because the zone is only catching up with the Witcher. And you're not forced to use that control wheel like me doing some acrobatic here from sitting behind the camera. You can also do it in a way, tap here, and then you can pinch to zoom. See how I make this bigger and very big, and then smaller again. So you can use pinch to zoom. I always find this a bit more difficult and tricky. I like the crisp response of mechanical control elements, but just for the sake of completeness, I wanted to show you, you can actually use your fingers here with pinch to zoom in order to make this smaller or bigger. Another great feature which we have on the Leica SL3 since its introduction is rotating info bars. And you see the info bars here, the image overlays with information about shooting parameters and settings. If I now rotate the camera by 90 degrees, let me quickly do that. You see how they rotate. You see this? It's now in horizontal orientation, and now it's in vertical orientation, portrait orientation, and it still recognizes Jennifer here because that's where the focus field is now. Look, if I move this, this is the Witcher, this is Jennifer, the Witcher, Jennifer, and you have all the information in portrait orientation now. And then if I go back into landscape orientation, it's just in the usual way. So that also works now like a charm, and is something a lot of people have asked for on the Leica Q cameras because we are used to it from the Leica SL3. And here it worked from the very beginning when the camera was introduced to market. In this context, if you shoot in portrait orientation and you want to see the full picture, you just stay in portrait orientation. Let me quickly show you. And a lot of people have addressed this in the past. You see here, I take a shot of Jennifer. And if I keep it in portrait orientation, I get the full picture here, which is very nice for your preview, of course. If you want these rotating info bars and the portrait orientation feature I just showed you, you need to enable this in the menu, and I've enabled it. That's why it worked just when I did it before. You go here into camera settings, and then you go into display settings, and then at the very bottom, you find a setting which is called rotate info bars, and then you get what you just saw in my little live demonstration. If you don't want it, you can also deactivate it, but then you have not the benefit that the information, the image overlays, the information bars, they rotate with the camera if you switch from landscape into portrait orientation. Another feature which is now streamlined are video profiles. Let's quickly switch into video mode here by swiping. And if I go into the menu and go here to video profiles, I can set up different profiles, profile 1, profile 2, 3, 4, 5. And within the profiles, I can tweak my settings in the way I want to have it. And that is all in one menu now under video profiles, and you can set up different profiles here, customize different shooting situations for your videography, what have you. And that is in the same way streamlined as what we saw before on file format, where you have now in one menu all the combinations of DNG sizes and JPEG sizes, which you can combine in whatever way you want. Nicely solved by Leica. Talking about videography, maybe a couple of more remarks. On all three cameras here, we have improved L-log video quality with improved noise behavior. So also here, Leica digged deeply into their algorithms, tweaked them, made them even better. And I mentioned in my introductory videos on the Leica Q3 Monochrom how great it is to have 8K black and white video natively coming from a black and white sensor without any color filter. And for the Q328 and Q343, we also have improved L-log video quality in terms of an optimized color rendering and more natural skin tones. So also here in terms of what you could call the video Leica look, improvements have been made by Leica engineers, which should give you an even better footage if you go for videography with your Leica Q3 cameras. Another feature which I find personally quite helpful is sitting in play mode or review mode. And I'm now in live view, and I've customized the center button here to bring my zone or my focus field back to the center of the frame. I show you, boom. If I press and hold, you see it's set up for toggle focus point. So no matter where my zone is moving in the frame, I can center it back with the push of the center button. Simple like that. But if I'm in play mode, I can also customize this button. And I'm now in play mode. Let's first take a shot. Let's go to the Witcher this time. You see, the moment in time the zone reaches the Witcher and touches on the body and the face, it recognizes the Witcher's face. So let's take a shot here with focus on the Witcher's face. And now I'm in play mode or review mode, and I can customize now any of these customizable function buttons for magnification. Let me press and hold. And let's go here to magnification. And now I'm back in live view. Now I go into play mode. And if I press that button, it will now automatically jump to the position in the frame and magnify where the focus field was sitting. And you remember, I focused on the Witcher's face and eyes. And if I press that button, it jumps exactly to that position. That is very convenient, and you actually don't get distracted here by the focus field. In many camera brands, it will also show you in the frame then the focus field or the zone, and that is not happening here. But it jumps directly to where the focus was sitting, namely the Witcher's face, and that is quite helpful. Of course, I can still, by double tap, for instance, also look into other areas of the frame. If I want to look at Jennifer, I double tap here. And here is her face, which is not so much in focus because I was focusing on the Witcher's face, and that is a little bit back, more away from the camera than Jennifer's face. And I'm here on widest open f1.7. But if I'm in play mode and I want to actually see where the focus was sitting, I just press that button I customized for that function, and it jumps to the position in the frame where the focus was sitting. Of course, I can also make this here even more magnified in. And then it works in the same way. For the sake of completeness, let's repeat this exercise very quickly. Let's go back into live view. Let's focus on Jennifer's face this time. You see, look at that. If the zone switches and moves away and starts to touch Jennifer, it jumps to Jennifer's face. Let's take a shot, and this time Jennifer's face should be sharp and in focus. Here we go. And now this customized button here for magnification, if I press it, it jumps to the part of the scene where Jennifer's face is sitting. Very convenient, very well done in the new firmware. Another quick topic is about the Leica Looks. The Leica Looks menu has been optimized. You can also adjust the Leica Looks now. I've not yet connected or reconnected the Leica Q3 with the Leica Fotos app again. I will do this after the video to download even more Leica Looks. But it has a separate menu item here. And if we go into Leica Looks, you see you can here, for instance, Leica Standard, adjust it, reset it. The same applies to Vivid. You can also delete it if you want. You have a lot more options here, and it's all conveniently placed in one menu, which is called Leica Looks. And as I said, I will update this with the looks I want for my shootings in the next couple of days when the video here is done. Another side note, we also can now check the battery condition, which is something that is available in various other camera brands and is convenient if you want to check how healthy your battery is. And for this, you go into the menu, and in the menu, you go to camera settings, and then the third entry here is battery condition. and you see it says very good. There is nothing else you can choose here, no matter how often you push. But I think a statement, quote unquote, very good when it concerns my battery is good to have and is something I appreciate. Another change is the default setting for flash photography. And I'm here. If I go into the user profiles, let me show you. Let's go here to user profiles. This is my profile when I'm in Math Photo. And if I go to the default profile and switch here, then if I go into the flash menu, let me quickly show you. Let's go here to flash settings. This is always on. And it used to be on auto before. If you like to have it on auto, you can set it on auto, what have you. But the default setting is now on. That's why I've chosen the default user profile here now. And in my setting, I will switch this to auto. Let's go here into my user profile again. Here we go. Let's go to Math Photographer. And if I then go back to Flash, let's go here. Flash settings. You see this is set by myself when I set up the camera to auto. And it's stored in my user profile. But you should be aware if you take the camera freshly out of box or if you switch to the default user profile, it will be always on. Another improvement they made is that you can now simultaneously use a Wi-Fi connection and the USB microphone. And by the way, maybe not even everyone is aware that you can use USB-C microphones on the camera. There is a dedicated setting now, which you find here in the menu under USB settings. And then here you see USB microphone is currently deactivated because I don't use the USB-C port on the camera in this way, but you can activate it. And then you get, of course, much better sound for videography in the way the Leica Q3 is reacting to sound signals in the environment. And that is now also possible simultaneously when using a Wi-Fi connection, for instance, if you are connected with the Leica Fotos app. All right, what else? I will conclude the video with a few more points which I find in the release notes here. First of all, the connection to the Leica Fotos app is much improved. It should connect faster and media and footage should load faster and should be more responsive. I mentioned already, you have to reconnect these cameras to the Leica Fotos app after you installed firmware 4.0.0 because based on a new EU regulation, they had to tweak something in the firmware and that requires a reconnection. It's about cybersecurity. And the last item I want to mention here is that a few things in the GUI have been further improved. What I can tell you is it's exactly streamlined and convergent now with the Leica SL3. The icons are the same. The menu structure are the same. If you are Leica SL3 shooter, you can become a Leica Q3 shooter immediately and vice versa. And that is, of course, very cool. And what they also say in the release notes is that you have a faster start time after extended inactivity. And that's basically all. I hope I mentioned everything. I went in detail through all these new settings. I hope you appreciate the presentation. Maybe one thing to bear in mind on the Leica Q3 Monochrom, let me go to the control screen again. Be aware that you have autofocus detection in the same way. Look at that. Human eye, face, body, human eye, face, animal body, and of course also animal eye and body. You have that in the same way implemented as you have it on the color Q3 cameras, but you don't have tracking. We only have field and spot here, and zone and multi-field. We don't have tracking in the same way as we have it here. Here you have field, spot, zone, multi-field and tracking, and the Leica Q3 Monochrom is not able to do tracking based on hardware limitations which come with a monochrome sensor. If you liked that video, don't forget to drop me a thumbs up. Stay tuned on my channel. There is always more to come. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and healthy. And of course, peace out.